We have a wonderful panel sharing with us experiences from Germany, from Europe, as well as from Massachusetts in the United States, and also Mr. Cruz from giving us more of a global perspective. I'll introduce our three panelists briefly, and then they will have 10 to 12 minutes to make the first presentations of their work, lessons learned, and what is relevant to the work of our conference. And then perhaps I'll ask a few questions, and then we will turn it to a Q&A with yourselves in the audience. Going first will be Judy Korn. Judy is the Chief Executive Director and founding member of the Violence Prevention Network, which is a German-based NGO, a community-based German NGO that works with individuals susceptible to extremism and violent radicalization. This program works with federal ministries, prosecutors, law enforcement to combat radicalization and fundamentalism, also has outreach to schools, civil society, and so on. She will be followed by Mr. Alok Chakravarty. Mr. Chakravarty is the Assistant U.S. Attorney for the District of Massachusetts. He is a top litigator for the U.S. Department of Justice and has also done a lot of work related to the intersection of civil rights and national security, developing civic engagement and community resiliency throughout Massachusetts, an experience that we're eager to hear about. We are also very happy to be joined by our friend Dr. Maqsood Cruz. Maqsood is the Executive Director of Hedayah. Hedayah is the International Center of Excellence for Countering Violent Extremism, established in 2012. So it's part of an international effort. It is based in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, but it is part of a global multi-country effort, and Hedayah and Maqsood is involved in a lot of efforts, projects globally and in various countries in countering violent extremism. Hedayah is sort of a key player in all of this movement, and we're eager to hear from him what they've been doing and what lessons they have. Turn now to Dr. Maqsood.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm not a doctor. I'm a psychologist by training, but I didn't do my doctorate. I look like it, I know. Thank you very much. I hope it wasn't a mistake to invite me. No. 40 years ago, a very young German brilliant man came all the way from Berlin to a very beautiful island called Abu Dhabi that is later going to be the capital city of the United Arab Emirates. And when he landed to Abu Dhabi, he saw that beautiful brown Bedouin. And it was an instant love from first sight. Wait. And actually, he wanted to be with her. And obviously, in that culture at that time, it was very difficult to just have a boyfriend-girlfriend kind of dynamics. So he had to marry her. And her father said, well, listen, you have to first convert to Islam, obviously, and you have to pay a certain amount of money, because for him it was kind of complicated how a German, blonde, green-eyes person just want to marry that beautiful Bedouin. And guess what? He actually did. He disappeared for 3 weeks, came back as a Muslim, brought the money, and that father was so touched, and he allowed the marriage to take place. Now, the result of that marriage was 3 ugly kids. I was number 2. Now, the question I ask everyone who knows about my story is this: how would you describe me? Am I white or black? Am I European or Arab? Am I Christian, Muslim, Chrislam, or none of the above? Well, Socrates once upon a time said in ancient times, I'm not an Athenian nor a Greek. I'm a citizen of the world. Therefore, with all the pessimism that we are facing, with everything that's happening in the world, I'm a declared stubborn optimist. And I do believe that yes, we can make some difference, and yes, there's always a hope. We're not here to kill each other. We're not here to simply say there's no hope for Homo sapiens in the future. And allow me to take this to bridge into my organization, Hedayah. And Hedayah is an Arabic Islamic word that means guidance, but not any form of guidance, guidance that comes from within. And Hedayah is the branding name of our formal long title, the International Center of Excellence for Countering Violent Extremism. The idea of Hedayah came in a meeting that took place in New York in September year 2011, when 29 governments, plus the EU, formed what they called the Global Counterterrorism Forum, GCTF. Basically, they had many discussions and debates over how we can unify global efforts to counter terrorism. But two important conclusions of relevance to Hedayah that I would like to share with you. The first conclusion is basically there's this consensus, realization, that approaching terrorism from a policing, security, military approaches alone is not enough. We need to look at things from a deeper perspective. Questions like, what's the role of psychology in this? What's the role of society in this? What's the role of economy, history, religion, etc.? We need to look at it from a very deep perspective. The second conclusion, that it's about time to create an international think and do tank that will be able to do two things: conduct research and provide analysis, but also do training and provide capacity building when it comes to what it means to counter violent extremism. This is where the idea of the center actually emerged. During this meeting, His Highness Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the United Arab Emirates, which is a member of the GCTF, proposed to host the center in Abu Dhabi. And of course, everyone is excited to be in such an exotic location. So on the 14th of December 2012, a beautiful Friday morning, such as this one, Hedayah was launched during the third ministerial meeting of the GCTF. We actually at Hedayah have 10 governments on our steering board, which are members of the GCTF. And these governments are the United States, the UK, Australia, Canada, Turkey, the EU, Egypt, Indonesia, Algeria, and of course the hosting country, the United Arab Emirates. And this sort of setup allowed Hedayah to position itself from an equal distance when it comes to methodologies, perspectives, what it means to counter violent extremism at all. And therefore we endorse an evidence-based approach to this question of violent extremism. Also, we have different types of people working with us. We have direct hires, but we also have secondment, which means different governments would support us by providing the expertise needed to support the work that we do. We have different topics and themes that we do our research on, but also provide training and curriculum based on this. And just to name few, the issue of foreign terrorist fighters, which is the flavor of the month at the moment. Everyone talks about this phenomena. And actually just yesterday, before I came, we finalized our first week of foreign terrorist fighters at Hedayah, where we worked on developing a curriculum, but also providing some sort of initiatives and solution-based approaches to how we can counter this phenomena, how to understand it, and what we need to do with it. We also ask questions and focus on topics related to the role of education and how can education help either to counter violent extremists, but also is education the problem, why we have violent extremists in the first place. That's why we produced the Abu Dhabi Memorandum on the Good Practices of Education and CVE, which was endorsed by the 29 governments in the EU in September 2014 on the margins of the UN General Assembly within the GCTF context. Basically, the work that we do at Hedayah reflects the way of thinking that is now being promoted, which is we need to be preventative, we need to be alternative, we need to be positive and constructive in our approach. If I would ask a violent extremist and look them in their eyes, I don't want you to be a violent extremist, their immediate response would be, so what do you want me to be? Well, I want you to be a critical thinker. I want you to be culturally intelligent. I want you to be creative, innovative in your own way to make the differences you want to see in the world. The question that we fundamentally try to answer, away from all the debates over what is violent extremism, what is not, is the following. Regardless of your worldview, regardless of what you embrace, your noble causes, your grievances, the question is this: how can you justify the use of violence against innocent people? 4 years, 5 years old child being killed because you have a point to make. How you justify that? This is the question, and this is what we try to always understand. The third point I want to share with you is basically some of the initiatives that probably might be of relevance to the theme of the conference, but also for you to think and reflect and maybe build on. For example, we at Hedayah, we've hosted in December 2014 the first ever CVE Global Expo on the role of communications in countering violent extremism. And many were very skeptical. Expo, CVE, what you're going to showcase really? This is where we said it's an exposition of ideas, the ability to show and demonstrate the shift from being problem-focused to become solution-focused. Although it's in our formal title that we say counter, but I personally don't like that because it always puts us in this responsive approach. We're always getting the first hit and we always have to justify. For me, I would like to see it the other way around. This is exactly what the situation looks like. We have a vacuum, and then we have these groups who basically come in and speak to our youth, telling them, I'll give you a sense of identity. I'll give you a sense of purpose. They show you some photos of certain victims, of certain practices, of children being killed, and saying, see, the world has failed you, failed these children. You want to make a difference? You want to bring justice? Join us. You can do that. You'll be the next hero. That vacuum is the main problem, and we can only fill that if we can be more constructive, more positive, and move beyond the usual debate. We've seen, for example, especially during the day, some ideas about, well, I want to create this dichotomy. I want to have this formula. If you are poor, therefore you're a terrorist. If you're religious, therefore you're a terrorist. If you're illiterate, therefore you're a terrorist. Well, Osama bin Laden comes from a very filthy rich background. Ayman al-Zawahiri is an MD, a doctor who was trained to save people. Obviously, he's not doing that anymore. And then if we talk about people converting or believing or being religious, for example, Yusuf Islam, formerly Cat Stevens, he still publishes books on why he holds his guitar. And definitely, my father, with his very silly sort of Nietzsche mustache, a Carson dangling from his upper lip, is still Muslim, and he still did not blow up himself. Therefore, these simplicities, and to try to simplify a rather more sophisticated phenomena, requires that we change our perception. Violent extremism is multidimensional by default. Therefore, it requires a different approach to it. At the same time, we need some sort of an interdisciplinary approach. What's the role of different subjects and topics on this, and how we can bridge the gaps and work together? Some examples that, for example, the UAE led on, which might answer some of the questions I heard earlier today. We had the honor to participate in an initiative led by the UAE for the second year called the Promotion of Peace Within Muslim Societies Forum. And basically, this forum is saying that a gathering of mainstream Muslim scholars saying that we need to have this internal Islamic dialogue, but also promote moderate, progressive Islam within Muslim societies, but also connect with Muslims as a group of people, whether you're Sunni, Shia, whether you're in the West, in the East, in Africa, or MENA, wherever you are, as long as you're part of this tradition, then maybe you could be part of this dialogue and ongoing conversation. They, for example, initiated what they call the Muslim Elders Council, which is basically about prominent scholars from around the Muslim world who are interested in tackling the issue of extremism, violent extremism, radicalization, de-radicalization from an Islamic perspective. These might be some things you want to explore and maybe learn more about as well. At the same time, President Barack Obama announced during the White House summit on CVE later in February, which I had the honor to participate in, the Joint Communications Hub, which the UAE and the US are leading to specifically counter the messaging of ISIL and also understanding how we can deal with these narratives and how we can deal with these messages. Finally, allow me to conclude by saying the following. The journey is yet to begin. It's a very long road. I don't think that we will be able to resolve all kinds of violent extremism in our lifetime. I hope so. But like we know in criminology, it's a wrong question to say which country has zero rate crime, because this doesn't happen. This is the human condition. So what we're aiming at, to reduce the percentages, to look at maybe more constructive, more positive approaches. At the end of the day, the future is what we want it to be. And therefore, my question to you, what kind of future you want for yourselves, for our children, who can actually live in a better world, a world that understands to be tolerant and coexist, not to kill each other or push the button to blow up themselves. Thank you very much.